those who were involved in making it come to life. Join us as we go behind the door.
Good evening, roomies, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Door with the Grey Rooms podcast. I am your host, Brooks Bigley, and with me tonight is D.I. Russell, the author of Season 4, Episode 2, entitled Smile. How are you this evening, D.I.?
Not bad. Brooks, how are you?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely not going to be visiting the dentist anytime soon, and I definitely can blame all of that on you, actually. You're a twisted bastard.
I'm not taking all of the blame. I think Jason has a big role.
Yes.
Especially looking at some of the Discord comments. I think Jason's choice of sound effects for the opening put a lot of people off.
Man, yes, his Jason's sound effects really put you just front and center, because when you're at the dentist, you know, like they're there right in your face. They're working right around your head. And when you're listening to a podcast, you know, that sound is right there around your face, working around your head. So there's no better horror story for a podcast, I think, than something involving a dentist. And man, gotta hand it to you. You really did it here. I'm at a loss of words. It was truly fucking disgusting to listen to this story. So, good job.
As we've discussed previously about my kind of Grey Rooms process, it always starts with what makes an audio drama different from, say, reading a book. Is the sound of the music, I feel. So every story, you could write a story about some people sat in a room talking, and it could be amazing, but you're missing out on that little specialness of the sound effects and that side of things. So I always, when I know the submissions window is open and I have to come up with something, I'm always on the alert for interesting or creepy sounds, and the story grows from that. So just so happened with this one, I was kind of in that, right, I need to come up with something, and I went to the dentist. So sitting in that, and I haven't been to the dentist in years, since moving out to Australia. One of those things you never get around to. So yeah, just sitting in, it reminded me of a bit of Little Shop of Horrors. But the guy sat in the waiting room. I think, Bill Murray sat in the waiting room, and you can hear stuff going on, and he's got this big grin on his face. Yeah, and it's like that. Just you don't know what's going on. You can hear it, so you can hear the drilling and the scraping and the suction, and your mind has to create the images that go with that sound. A bit like an audio drama. So yeah, it had to use all that, and also stay away from I think I stayed away mostly from the tortured, the dentist that tortures the patients. Stay away from that trope.
I was going to say, I going into this thinking, like, there was no evil person. There was no evil human. There was no evil dentist in this story. You did a good job of not falling into that trope, and creating something, very distinct to serve, I guess, as the bed. Oh, man. It just reminds me of the tooth being pulled out of the bed of the jaw. Just yeah. You did a superb job at like you're talking about how our brain has to kind of fill in, what we see because we're hearing it, as an audio drama. The same thing, I guess, if you read it. But your stories have really, all of them that we've done have had this very visceral scenario, like just this overall bigger environment around them that has allowed Jason to explore the sounds, more so the special effects that he's so good at, instead of just, levels and audio and putting voices here and there. So you did a fantastic job. So you said this started because You went to the dentist. So this story began right after you went to the dentist, and you thought, "Oh man, this is going to work." Is that how you did it?
Looking back, it was probably during. Because a little thing that happened in that appointment made it into the story. Which is it's still in, a very slight wobbly tooth. And, nothing major, but it's teeth aren't meant to wobble, so slight concern. And I just went for an initial kind of checkup. So I'm a planner. I don't like surprises. I like to know what's coming. I'm in the chair, and she has a look at it. I went, yeah, I think we should pull that out. Oh, okay then. So I need to make an appointment, come back, and she just started getting the stuff out the drawer. Oh, we'll do it right now. And I kind of looked at her. What now? I'm not mentally prepared for that. Oh, we'll wait. Especially when I've not been for years. It's a bit of a jumping in at the deep end. Oh, we're just going to pull a wisdom tooth out. So when in the story, when she says, "Oh, we'll deal with it now," his reaction was my reaction.
Very much so, yeah.
So to answer your question, I suppose the creative process started while in the chair.
Okay. So then, where did you get this idea of this little festering maggot that explodes at the very end?
Well, once again, as I always say, I don't only just think about the sounds when I'm doing a grey room script. There's always the swing away from the last one. So to kind of follow, we were talking before the recording about the stories we've had over the years and how you're much better remembering the titles than me. The swings back and forth. The first one was very action-packed and gory. So Summer Child, the first one. And then the next one, which, see, I just have Summer Child, the slide one, the running one, and now the dentist one.
I like how you boil them down.
Yeah. Yes, we went from action-packed and gory to quiet and intimate. And then from that, big city, big destruction, loud. So my swing here was, instead of the giant alien creatures last year, and all these big sounds, the swing away was something really small. And again, with the sounds, when it's kind of rustling around in the bin and it's chewing on the teeth, these are very small, kind of more irritating sounds as opposed to buildings exploding and things like that. So yeah, that was my move away from the last one, really strip it down. If it was a play, it's a one room kind of play, if you will. 2 characters, yeah, very, very simple. And that return to a more kind of intimate everyday setting. But while we're talking about Jason's sound design, let's just get everyone else involved, give them a shout out, because I love every Grey Room's story, every single one. With the ones that I've written, this one, not that there's anything wrong with the other ones, there really isn't, but this one, it was so much more, I don't know, precise for me personally. Every line was said as I had it in my head when I wrote it. The way that the dentist is, while you have the thoughts going on in her head of, taking on a little bit of pleasure in her job, not sadistic, but a little bit. But yet when she speaks, she's professional, she's soothing, she's reassuring. So everything was, those little inflections, absolutely perfect. Graham doing his awesome it was a pain to write.
It's probably a pain to act, literally.
Yeah, I would love to know if did he do anything? Do we know if Graham did anything to his mouth? The method acting, I don't know, but he did an awesome job. He balanced that whole. You can understand what he's saying so well. You get every word, but he comes across the especially when he's in pain and the moans, absolutely wonderful. And something else that I noticed was I always go on about James' music. This one, I like his. It's jolly yet sinister at the same time. But the timing of it throughout the story, the timing was absolutely perfect. When it goes quiet, when these little cliffhanger kind of notes, oh, amazing.
Yeah, James really dialed in extremely well already this season, just from knowing the stuff that he's been doing, working on behind the scenes. He's become such a master of matching his audio sound to what Jason concocts basically for your brain to see, with your ears. That synergy is very much felt, and this is just, that second episode coming out this season, and it was so important, I think, for JM to dial in the sound because Jason has to keep the scene in one room, with literally basically one main actor the whole time performing. Bolton, the character, he's just supplying that like torture comic relief in the background almost. But yeah, it's about your dentist, experiencing this and keeping it all in that one room. So yeah, JM did so well of like following along and ratcheting it up and just hitting all those beats the way that Jason laid the bed for. I mean, they worked so well together. So it's so cool that you see that synergy basically.
Yeah, and spoiler warning.
Yeah, all the spoilers. Go ahead.
Spoilers. The end surpassed the words on the page because it literally ends with a birth, if you will, and I never kind of thought of it that way when writing it. Thanks to the sound effect and Krista's selling, it sounds like she's in labour, and then you have the end. It was. I was watching. Oh, sorry, I was listening to it with this kind of wide grimacing grin.
Yeah, and notice how you even slipped, and you said you were watching because that's how visceral. First off, your story was, but yeah, the way that Jason can just trick you into seeing what you're hearing. It's so. It's so fun.
Yeah, because I used to listen on the way to work in the car, but my connection thing doesn't work anymore. So this was the first time I think I've listened to one of my Graham stories the first time with a really good set of headphones. Lying down, eyes closed, really getting into it. Just such a powerful experience this time. Everything was exceptional.
Well, so tell me, let's think bigger here. You've done the big monster horror story, which was last season with Personal Best, the big giant creature attacking the city. You've done this one, which is like the body horror almost. Well, actually, it is body horror basically. You did. I don't know what to call it, like psychological horror for sure. It was the Down, the story about the slide. To me, it was so touching and unnerving. Like, what in the goddamn hell happened to those two? You left this purposeful mystery about everything. So that to me, it was more like a psychological horror. And then first season. More visceral, kind of not body horror. Well, I don't know. You had cannibals in it. You flourish with showing us with your words these beautiful visuals that get absorbed auditorily into the ears. And a lot of people might get bogged down with explaining or over-explaining certain situations, but you're just very good at just pacing and beats, just right through, getting to the core of the story, up and going usually right away with your stories. So outside of the gray rooms, in terms of what you write, do you do anything else with podcasts, or like what other stories? I know that you write many different books. Like what is your main flavor of horror that you deliver?
Well, this is the only thing outside of my books and short stories that I work on. Keep it pure. Yeah, like at the moment, I have a series of novellas that's it might have its, to coin a phrase, visceral moments. Yeah, they're more overtly psychological because they deal a lot with mental health conditions, which is kind of my day job. So, kind of having the everyday knowledge around that area. In fiction, you can have a play around with it, but still being respectful to the topic, but a bit more fantastic with it.
Is it like a bit like a therapy almost that can help you work through certain issues a bit, or are you allowed to speak a little bit more about what you do for your job at all?
It's complicated. Let's just say I work in mental health. You got to be quite official in what you, how you describe what you do. So, yeah, let's just say I work in mental health. Yes. So that kind of area, it's when I'm writing those novellas. And I have a huge novel that needs finishing, in the same vein, and that kind of thing is take a mental health condition that someone might suffer with, so depression, anxiety, or something like that. If that was more embodied, if that was, say, a spirit or a creature, what would that look like? How does that being affect someone's life the same way that the actual condition does? And kind of having a bit of a play with that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, translating it into like a corporeal monster, basically.
Yeah. But the last one was about eating disorders, and it featured the main character is a girl with anorexia. Now, like most mental health conditions, things are stigmatized, and I think in normal everyday circumstances, this person would be kind of, frowned upon. Oh, don't do that. What's going on? You need to eat more. You need to do this, do that. I don't know why you're starving yourself. Things like that. So the challenge is to kind of offer the reader insight as to potential reasons why this person is going through what they're going through, and to kind of rationalize and destigmatize it, and kind of just go, yeah, it's not necessarily, it's hard to describe. Yeah.
Well, it seems like you can use horror kind of as like a sandbox. Yeah, I've used this analogy maybe before, I think, but horror is kind of a sandbox that you can take, like, feelings and emotions and issues and things that need to be dealt with are kind of like little toys and action figures, and you can work them out in that sandbox and kind of get through maybe some stuff, because horror lets you explore uncomfortable things. And like you said, you can channel maybe depression, the monotony of day after day after day. You could turn that into a horror story about being stuck in a room that you can't get out of, and then like really ratchet up the horror. That way you can process your feelings of depression maybe by writing that story specifically. I get the flow that you're indicating here. That's a really beautiful way to tackle it, I think.
But on the flip side, at the moment, I am writing a series of novelettes for more younger readers, so like say 12 years up, to support some novels I have planned. And that's a different feeling altogether. That's just fun. Like they used to say with X-Files, like, creature of the week. It's like, right, werewolves. Let's do something with werewolves. Right, you got a kid, and he's doing this. Werewolves, right? And you just fire it out, and it's fun. So yeah, a very different vibe to what I'm currently doing to what I was previously doing.
And now a break for a word from our sponsors. And now back to the show. So where do you find yourself doing that? Are you working with? You said you're working with younger people to help them write horror stories?
No, I'm. What happened was this has been years in the making, because many years ago, this was around 2010. Oh my word, it has been a few years. 11 years ago. So I used to be a high school teacher, and it was no secret that I had my kind of side hustle as a horror writer, and all the time you'd get some of your more interested students going, "Oh, I might go, have a look at one of your books," and it's like, no. That is,
got to keep it separate.
That would be, because when you write for an adult market, there are adult things in books, and I just thought it'd be a bit just very off-putting if you're trying to teach a class and you know that the kid at the back's reading a sex scene that you wrote. Oh no!
Right.
So I'd get hassled. Well, why don't you write something that we can read? So I kind of thought, right, I'll do that then. So I wrote a book, and it's just one of those things. It's always floating around, and it never really did anything with it. So then I wrote the follow-up to it. So now I've got these 2 novels with more planned. I'm hoping to release them next year. And these little novelettes that accompany them, sometimes a little bit of maybe backstory or something tenuously linked. It's just having fun and getting back into writing full-time more. When I first started high school, this was in the UK, so I was about, I think, 12 when you start high school. And back then, you had, do you remember Point Horror? Do you remember those? It's going back
What is it called?
Years. Point Horror. It was a book series. They were like novellas aimed at like that 13, 14-year-old. R.L. Stein used to write them.
Okay.
There's a lot of different writers, but I think he was the main one. And then Goosebumps came out a few years later. And that was what I was kind of raised on at that age. Because then from there, you then start getting into Kuntz and King and those kind of guys. And I kind of feel, apart from possibly Darren Shan a few years ago, there hasn't been a big, urban fantasy and dark fantasy, there's plenty of that, but more horror for younger readers. I don't feel there's an awful lot out there. So it'd be good to help with that.
Yeah. I mean, how else to get future adults into the stuff that we love? But I agree with you that, again, if approached tactfully, that horror is great for younger people. If it's, of course, kept, I don't want to say watered down, but just kept more to their age. You can have horror that is age appropriate, right? And that would let them also work out maybe stressors in their life or overcome certain things that they're afraid of in real life because they're able to feel like they can work through it, through a horror story. Like I have 2 younger kids, and my oldest is 8.5, and she is like in the phase where she likes to write stories. She'll just sit down with ideas and then just like type on a computer, very, very long stories. And she's really good at kind of coming up with like, the beginning and then the idea and then like the conclusion. But definitely even with younger kids, there's something about horror that they're attracted to. It seems like a good vehicle to get them latched on to something, otherwise, or fantasy, but still, I think it's proper, like you say. There hasn't been maybe a big push or just anything hugely available for kids. Why not be a part of that? Pushing that, yourself. That's great. Good on you, man.
Yeah, I remember doing quite a bit of reading of what was around at the time when I first started. And I say this was 10 years ago, so a bit dated now. And also talking to a few other authors that have dabbled in this kind of demographic, even though that sounds like a very marketing word. Because I had concerns. What can you put in? What can you not put in? And the basic rules we came up with were keep the foul language out, keep any of the sexual stuff out, keep any drug use out. As far as the gore's concerned, do whatever you want.
Right. See, exactly. That's where the whole age-appropriate thing comes from. Right. Just remove sex, remove drugs, that kind of stuff. That's just making it age-appropriate. But yeah, the actual topics and things discussed, like you can talk about dead things and you don't have to be ashamed about that. There's certain things that you are more free to do. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. The bit that worries me the most is kind of the other dramas the characters might go through. So apart from the obvious, there's a werewolf killing people. So that's the main threat of the story. But with the characterization, the other things that they're going through wouldn't necessarily be this kind of stuff you'd use for an adult novel. Not necessarily, but more things like the whole social politics of school and the first blossoming kind of edging into relationships and teachers and studying and parents and all. So I'm not a young man anymore. So it's always the worry of you want to write for these readers with relatable characters and their problems, rather than it being a middle-aged man. I think of Steve Buscemi with that skateboard. How are you going, fellow children? So that's the bigger challenge for me writing these books. Not necessarily the kind of judging, can I cut this person's head off? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
You want to connect. You want to connect to what that younger person would portray as something they'd be afraid of. I totally get that. And then once you determine that, then you can play around with that. Like, I remember this book. I don't even know if you would call this horror. I don't know what you would consider it, but it was definitely young adult. I read it when I was younger. I think it was called The Duplicate. And it was just about, this young teenage boy that somehow found a device that could, he would press a button and it would just instantly make a copy of himself. But it was written in a very believable, speculative fiction type of way. So like, how would that actually pan out? Well, where the hell would you hide your duplicate? And then you send your duplicate to school, all the things that he does, you don't know. There's no memory that you share. So how are you now going to keep track of when you show up the next day? Like, so it began to deal with that and how quickly that unravels. And then in the story, the damn duplicate was like, well, I'm going to make my own duplicate of myself. And so it proliferated from there to the point that like the seventh duplicate was like, he was much more primal. And just very like a caveman almost, and so that scared the shit out of me reading that book. This weirdness and this like, oh my god, is he gonna survive this? Oh my god, it's getting worse. Oh, his duplicate made a duplicate, and then there was a girl involved. So like as a young man reading, that aspect, like you said, like it was teaching me about relationships. Like he has a crush on this girl. She's like, oh, I like him. I'm gonna help him through this weird ass situation he's going through. It was done in a very mature way, not like a cartoony, look at the clones I made kind of way. So there's for sure ways to reach younger people with strange, scary, absurd scenarios and still teach them. Well, actually, I don't really know what I learned from that book. So everything I just said, whatever.
Well, it reminds me of, again, going back a few years, there's the Australian kids kind of horror show called Round the Twist. Do you ever see that or hear
No,
about that one?
not familiar with the name.
I think this was maybe the late 80s, maybe.
Say the name one more time.
Round the Twist. I think it's also based on a series of short stories, I think. But there was an episode where they find a duplication machine.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Horror.
So, they start experimenting with things and they're duplicating clocks and objects and, food. Oh, we've got a cake and now we've got 2 cakes so we can eat more cake, kind of thing. And the main plot of the episode was there was like a running race up and down. They lived in a lighthouse, up and down the lighthouse. Who can do the most kind of up and down, So the teenage daughter duplicates herself to win this race because she runs halfway up, then ducks into a room, and then a duplicate comes out, runs the rest of the way. So they're only running halfway back and forth. But the thing was, the things they duplicated only had a certain kind of shelf life. After an hour, they just started to fade out of existence.
There's always a rub.
So then at the end, our teenage girl character has to effectively watch herself die. And it's like, whoa, some existentialism just comes in at the end. So yeah, like you say, it's you can create stories for this kind of for the younger reader, and it can be all fun and games and nasty and fun, but there's always that kind of message in there or that exposure, So yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. It's just a fun way to impart a message a different way. You can come up with a fable, dress it up as a horror story, and kids will eat that shit up. But if you just gave them the fable, they're gonna be like, "Nah, I'm too cool for that." No, so
you can get the. Let me see. You can get it on YouTube, I think. That episode.
we can actually find the episode.
I shall put it on my Twitter. Should anyone want to find it?
Yeah, you know what? We we'll do that. We'll put it in the show notes. We include that in the show notes. So
beautiful.
yeah. Then people can click and see what you're talking about. Look at that 21st century interaction. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's Australian, so flying the flag.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of Australia, where about in Australia are you at?
I am. I'm in the country, but it's not too dry and deserty. I am on the west side. So, if you know Australia that much, where Perth is, our capital city, Perth, I'm about 3 hours drive south. So, kind of in the bottom. Let me do my. So it's the southwest corner.
Okay. Do you ever go out to Perth? Is that like a big city center?
Yeah, that's the big city. Not often, but yeah, if you need anything kind of hospital treatment that's outside our little country town, yeah, you gotta go up a few times.
Okay, so life is different outside of Perth than inside of Perth?
It's not a stark cultural difference, but everything's very, very spread out once you get out of the city. So yeah, a lot more convenient up there. But...
Okay. Yeah, I live in a very similar, I live outside of the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And I mean, you can drive for 40 minutes, north of the city, or an hour east of the city, and you're going to hit farms, you're going to hit just open country that doesn't even have farms. There's just nobody lives there. It's just rolling hills or forests, rolling hills with forests, not just waving grains or anything. You can definitely get outside of a massive city center feel very fast. I imagine it's the same like in Los Angeles. People talk about just driving out to the desert or whatnot. So it's all the same. I guess if you live in New York, you just try to escape New York and you just end up inside of more New York. I don't know. It's just so goddamn big. We just don't experience that. So whatever.
Yeah, well, talking of New York, my town has got 2 pubs, a fuel station, and a bakery. That's all we have.
Wow. There you go. You know where everything is at. How convenient.
You have the joke, I'm going on a pub crawl, and you have 2 drinks and go, right, going home now.
There you go. You visited all the pubs. Well, hey, as we come to a close here, do you have anything that you wanted to share with new writers or with any new fans that you might be interested in sharing something that you love about horror? Any social media that we might be able to direct fans towards if they want to find out more of what you do, what you write, about your books, things like that?
I always try and direct everyone to my Twitter page. I don't normally spend much time promoting my stuff, but I tend to I try to watch a horror movie a day, so I'll normally be talking about that. But yeah, so my Twitter handle is capitals DI and then capital R Musclemania. So we'll put it in the we'll put a link somewhere probably. But yeah, always up for horror themed chats, because you often find new games and movies and stuff you haven't come across before, just having a chat about stuff. So I love it.
Yeah, and on our Discord, Jason is very keen on discussing horror, themed movies and shows and video games, and does a lot of that kind of interaction with, many fans who are, on the Discord, on the Grey Rooms Discord. There should be a link to that also in the show notes. So, man, if anybody just wants to just smooze with, people from the podcast and talk about video game, horror video games and horror movies and all that kind of stuff, come on over. And I know that you're on Discord. Do you ever, you hang out there? There's so many people. It's hard to keep tabs on the hundreds of people in there.
Yeah, I pop in, and just if anyone is thinking about joining the Discord, very, very nice bunch of people. Yeah, everyone's friendly and welcoming, so don't hesitate, just get on over there. Say hello to everybody and be welcomed with open arms.
Oh, you're too kind. Yes. Oh, it's so funny. The horror community always welcomes everybody with open arms. It's so ironic. It was great of you for joining us tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to sit and chat, DI. And I thank you for sharing your world with us here in the Grey Rooms.
Oh, thank you, as always. I always say it is the kind of the closest thing I've come to seeing my words made into a movie, and this is just as good. And you guys do such a fantastic job. I'm just happy that we're still going strong. You've
been around you've been around since day one, season 1. Whatever the hell was when your season 1 episode came out.
I know, and it's while it's great on the one hand, I always worry that how much longer can these guys keep this pace up?
Forever.
Is the day gonna? I was gonna say, will the day come where all the mysteries are solved and the Grey Rooms close their doors? But I don't think
Never.
all the mysteries. I don't think all the mysteries will ever be solved. Because you like to keep everybody guessing.
Absolutely. That is the architect's job. She's got to keep this whole goddamn thing going. We'll never solve them all. There will always be something.
Because that's one thing. My episode has traditionally been quite late on, in the season, so it's a bit strange being episode 2. But already, again, go on the Discord. Already, the fan theories over the bigger season 4 stories are starting to circulate after 2 episodes.
Yeah. Yep.
Normally, from experience, it slowly builds, but people are keen on this season to already start guessing what's going on. So it's good. It's good to see everyone talking about it and get so involved.
Oh, it's amazing! Absolutely, this is a great start to the season. Yeah, we've got so much planned. So we're just at the very bottom beginning of the mountain, looking straight up at the top, but we will all make it, and it will be worthwhile. So,
as it always is.
Yeah, exactly. And as usual, the biggest thank you goes out to our fans and followers who listen daily and spread the good word of Bob. Hashtag stay gray. Take care and enjoy your evening, DI.
Thanks, Brooks. Same to you. Bye, everyone.
And good night, folks. Bye.
Join us each week after every episode for another edition of Behind the Door.